Hey everybody, it's Pete Blower at the Corrections Unfiltered, and I am sitting here with the one, the only Charlie Bueno. Charlie's got 10 years of corrections experience working in both in county jails as well as prisons. He's been there, done that. I've served alongside of Charlie and seen him in some very challenging and difficult situations. He's been a guy that I've relied upon to help me get through a few of my own. So Charlie was saying how he wanted to talk about different experiences in corrections. So I thought, let's just get on the line and do it. So how you doing, Charlie? How things going?
Good, good. Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Great to do another podcast. Exciting.
Yeah. So what has your mind thinking today? What's going on in there?
Yeah, our conversation we had earlier yesterday and today, I was on a little road trip and started thinking back about your first day when you got out of the school, and they said what shift you're going to be working and the things that go through your mind. But it's just the things that stick with you. Like I can remember who I was with when I walked through those gates on that first day, and the conversation we're having. And then I mentioned before, you talk to the central, they let you in, and the two gates click. And when that second gate clicked, it was like, oh, you get that little shiver up your spine. But you go in and you're walking in through the front entry there, and you got to be searched and take off all your shoes, go through the whole metal detector and everything. And I can remember we were like 45 minutes early, and I'm always an early person. And we're sitting there, and I can remember people coming by, everybody's looking at you, but it's like the smells. Like I'll never forget that. And I can remember, and again, I don't know why people walking by, and I'm like looking down at their shoes. And I'm thinking to myself, tennis shoes, really? I'd wear nothing but boots in here. I'm starting to like mentally pick people apart as my first day on the job, you know. And then the roll call comes, and it was kind of like unofficial. Yeah, I could remember the captains and lieutenants walking up and down the line, kind of eyeballing everybody, checking everybody out, maybe just sizing me up. I don't know. And then, they said, okay, you go to your units. And I could remember you had your little lunchbox over your shoulder. I could remember that uniform, like it's just weird. The smells. I don't know why the smells were hitting me. The minute you hit that hallway, I remember. Chow hall, I could remember smelling the food. I don't know why. It just
Did
sticks
it
with
smell
me.
good? And make your
Yeah,
did it
it
make
did.
your
Hey,
did it make your belly rumble?
I ate the food there, so I never complained. And uniform smell, and it was I don't know, maybe kind of like sweaty, dirty, but those are the things that like stuck out in my mind. And you had to go down and chit out a radio and cuffs. I was thinking to myself, here I am standing in line with 15, 20 other people's getting all your gear. That got old real fast. And then we're all walking down the A-wing hallway, and everybody just started peeling off, going into their units. And now, I'm like walking by myself and I'm thinking, oh, this is it. This is when it's going to happen. You go to the door. At
I'm in
that
the
time,
belly of the beast.
yes, those are my words exactly. Walking in, what am I walking into? The belly of the beast.
Yeah.
And when I first started, they actually had keys. You could key yourself in and out of the doors. And I walk in there, and you go up to the little pod house there, and where your computer is, and you could watch the inmates. And I can remember them all coming to the door because they knew you were new. They're banging on the door and yelling. You just kind of like give them the eyeball and walk in there. Then I'm thinking to myself, okay, and then the whole rush comes over. Okay, I gotta go log in on the computer. I gotta do my watch tours. I gotta do my cell checks. I gotta go to Chow. I gotta release them to rec. I gotta let them go to their programming. Now I'm thinking, how are we gonna do all this? In 12 hours. That's a lot,
Right.
But yeah, the cell searches what got me. Those were the ones.
How
What's
come?
that? When they tried you right away. You walked into the door. I remember walking. You had to go to each corner and push the button, and it would ring in central control, and you had to do it on all tiers. And as you're walking, the remarks are coming. I'm checking cells and looking in them. Hey, you can't look in there. Now you're in my house now. Yeah, I can't look in there. And then I just started wandering in the cells, looking around. They come to the door. They're sizing you up. They want to see what you got, what you're going to do. And then,
Real quick though, I gotta ask you though. So yeah, because had my first day, my first week, my first year. So when they're telling you, hey man, you can't look in there, I know your brain, you're thinking, okay, I got to posture up and act like I can, but you can't say there wasn't a little bit of doubt if you going, geez, can I? Can I not? What can I do?
oh yeah, I second guess myself on everything.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that's that's the handbook. Like your handbook's kind of like your Bible. And I didn't believe all that until my partner came on, and she was like on it. The handbook was everything. She had a great memory. She remembered where inmates lived. If they tried to cross over to another unit, she was bringing them back. So we fed off each other. She had weaknesses that I was stronger on, and I had weaknesses that she was stronger on. So we fed off each other. But I can remember trying to, and again, walking through those units and them smells. They're cooking, and you got the burritos going, and they're all sizing you up. That's all they're doing. That first day, they want to. I can remember that going out of the one pod, going to the other side, and I'm going out, and inmate runs up, he starts, hey, CO, and I was just probably really wasn't paying attention. Went to close the door, and he stuck his foot in the door. Now I thought, okay, now what's just going to happen here? I turned around and looked at him. He said, you slammed my foot in the door. I said, no, you put your foot in that door when I was closing it. And he just kind of like looked at me and backed off. So it was like, I kind of stood my ground right from the beginning. But, it's like everything else. You learn to pick your battles. But you talked about the funnel, everything coming down on you, everything you thought you had to do. How am I going to get all this done in 12 hours? And then something pops off, and now your whole day is just in shambles.
right.
You got to lock somebody up. You got to inventory. And this is where the captain and the lieutenants, they came around. They came around a lot, and they just kind of reassured you. They're like, look, don't worry about getting everything done. You just do your schedule, get your moves done, and then you do what you can do. And if you can't do something, just make sure that you log it. And they said, and that's the other thing I learned was golden rule. If you're listening out there and you're in corrections, never lie to your logbook. Never ever lie to your logbook. I see more people get in trouble and go down because they lied to that logbook. And you can't lie to it because it'll catch you. Those mistakes will catch you.
Yeah.
That was one of the things. Chief told me that one time. Never lie to that logbook because I'll find out and I'll see it.
Logbooks are a valuable document.
Absolutely. And that they'll work for you and they'll work against you. But I think they'll work more for you than they will against you.
So Charlie, you're talking about your first day, the sights, the smells, the scents, the interactions with the inmates, the challenges, foot in the door. You're talking about all that. But how many weeks of training did you have before you had your first day?
I think we were 6 weeks.
6 weeks?
6 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong with that, but it was somewhere in that area.
So we're talking about you getting all the information fed to you through a fire hose. How prepared? It's good training. I'm not talking disparagingly about training programs. It is. It's a lot of information because I have people when they ask me about it, they go, well, "What do you train people in?" Oh, well, you know how you use a screwdriver? Yeah. Well, our screwdrivers they come from a board that has a shadow and there's a hook, and you have to put something on to identify the reserve. There's a lot to it. So you got there that first day. How much of that training was beneficial to you?
I would say, I mean, a lot, because we had not only did we do book, we did our handbook, we did a lot of policy, but the officers and the staff that came in and talked to us, there was a lot of them. They talked to you like a CO, not like, hey, you got to learn this policy. If you don't know this policy, you're going to fail. They came in and kind of schooled you on your first day, how it was going to be. If you ran into a problem, and you think you needed help, don't hesitate to call me. And that's what I liked. But in it all depends, I think, on how serious you were about the job. If you're interested in it, you're going to be more attentive, and you're gonna retain more, I think. I'm not a book person by any means, but when people were talking to me, that's when I get the best out of a class. I get the most out of it with someone, like when we're talking, because it's more personal. It's
Yeah.
there's not a lot of like, I don't want to say fancy words, but different terminologies for things. Like my one captain. I mean, he broke everything down for you. He was schooling you, but he was teaching you also. And he was a
Mhm.
great one to, if you had a problem, he was right there. It's okay. Let me explain this to you in layman's terms. Let me explain this CO to CO, and he broke things down and just made them to where, okay, now that makes sense. Or, one of his famous line was, you have to make this your own. There's nobody going to come in here and do this for you. So if you're not going to do it, then you're going to fail.
Yeah.
But
I remember when I started out, to the best of my knowledge, or best of my memory, it was 2 weeks. Maybe it was a 3 week academy. Then you had a waited period of time working at the facility. Then you went to the actual federal academy in Glencoe, Georgia.
okay,
So you did 2 or 3 weeks. It might have been two of institutional familiarization training, and then you started your shift. And I was lucky to have drawn midnight to 8, which I learned to really appreciate midnight to 8. Um, and I remember, going in thinking, okay, here I am, former Marine. I'm still in great physical condition. I'm responsive to orders. I'm going to be the best thing that ever happened, and I show up and go, same thing, shift briefing, show up. And I'm looking at people, they did like a walk around. You didn't do OJT where you spent 2, 3, 4 hours shadowing an officer. They just walked you around the facility, generally at count time when the inmates aren't out, because that way they're in, you're out, you get to see the place. And so I'm at shift briefing. They tell me where I'm working at. It's a housing unit, and I go up. I have people like, "Hey, come on, man, I'll show you." We go up there, and I'll never forget. It was the proverbial. I walk in. There's the officer getting off at midnight, handing me a radio, keys, and we had this thing, a little alarm system for in case you were in an emergency situation. And it was like a brick. He hands me all this stuff, and boom, he's out the door. I'm like, okay, all right.
yeah,
I think, but for whatever reason, the only thing that stuck in my head was if they ask you something that you don't know, say no,
no,
because it's easier to
exactly.
turn a no to a yes than a yes to a no.
Yeah,
So I get in there and I'm thinking, okay, what am I supposed to do? So I had the little belt clips and stuff, and I clip on my keys and I get the radio and I put it all set. I thought, okay, I'm supposed to walk around and make sure everything's secured. He said it was midnight. I think count time was like 12:15, 12:05, 12:30. Whatever happened when you got on post, eventually you're going to count. Well, it's night shift. There's not like 50 people walking around. So you had to wait for them to show up to back up your count. And I thought, okay, so I'm going to walk this unit and I'm going to make sure it's secure. I remember I'm supposed to do that. So I go around and I'm juggling doors. And, oh, what are you juggling that door
yeah,
for? I'm like, oh man, they're not going to tell me what to do. So I come around this one row of cells. I'm going to call it a tier. Come around this one tier of cells, and there's a big glass door. I mean, it's a wood frame door, big piece of glass, and there's a guy standing in the glass. And you can tell it's a TV room. And I remember them talking about having TV rooms, and sometimes they're broken up racially, and all this other stuff. And so he's standing at that door, and he's like, "Hey, man, you have to let us out to use our bath, to use the toilets in the cells before count time. What's the answer?
no,
No."
no,
And I'm like, "No." Oh God, man, those people lit up on me. And then I realized it wasn't one guy in a cell, it was multiple people inside the cell. And they were all wanting a little chunk of my hide. I heard so
yeah,
many things about my mother. Evidently, she was a pretty fun person and she was pretty
yeah,
popular. Heard all
yeah, oh
kinds of
yeah,
different things that they planned to do to me. And I'm thinking, what do I do? What do I do? I'm supposed to say no. I'm not supposed to say yes. And so then the inmates in the cells are going, hey, you, this, and this. You're supposed to let them out. At this time, where I was working at, the inmates had keys to their own cells. You didn't.
oh,
They had their own key. So you let come to find. So the other officer shows up. The place is kind of banging and loud and yelling and stuff, calling me names. The other officer comes over to count. And he's like, "Man, what'd you do?" I said, "Well, I went up there. There's this room. He goes, "You mean a TV room?" I'm like, "Yeah, there's a TV room." And the guy asked me about using the toilet. He goes, "Did you let him?" I went, "No." They said the answer is always no. They went, "Not on this one, man. The answer is yes." So we had to go up there, and he called him down. He's like, "Hey, man, he's new, first day." Of course, they gave me a hard time about it, but it was a learning experience because, like, within, I show up, I get my stuff, I go to work, and my very first action I get is I got a whole place kind of, really, banging and hollering and stuff because of my lack of experience. But you got through it.
Yeah, because they give you the, they can't cross the yellow line or the red line, whatever color it was. When you're walking up and down that hallway, don't let them come out in the middle of the hallway. They're not allowed to cross over. And I can remember we used to do chow move, and they say you go out into the hallway and you post it up in the hallway, and you gave commands. Well, I get out in the hallway. Guess who's the only one out in the hallway? Charlie. No other officers decided they were coming out. They decided to stay in. So I said, hell with it. I run the whole hallway. I walked up and down the hallway for the whole move, and they were just raising Cain the whole time I was there. I'm telling them, get against it. And then that's when the whole, I told you, they told you could pat down an inmate at any time. That's when I just started randomly picking people out.
Yeah.
And then they go in for their after their moves, whatever it was moving, and then the captain would come out and call you in the hallway, and he would walk up and down the hallway. And that's when we'd be like, look, you just choose your battles. Don't get crazy out there in that hallway because there's a lot of inmates out there, and I don't understand why these other officers weren't out there. But I'm glad you were out there. He said that was a good job, but that could all go bad for you. So you got just, if you're out there by yourself, make sure you let me know. Call me and let me know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
There's certain areas where a decision can really light a place up pretty quick.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We had that happen a couple of times where the
But
officer told him shut the grill, shut the gate, shut the gate. There's an inmate. Guess who's stuck in between the grills, the gates with all the inmates? Me. And here I'm thinking it's a weapon. Here he's bringing food from the chow hall. So it erupted into a major deal where we had to call for it. We had to call for help. But
right.
there I am stuck in the middle of between those gates all by myself with probably 200 something inmates,
Yeah,
trying
it's
to,
an
because I'm
uncomfortable
thinking of,
feeling.
yes, very, very. But again, I never, I don't want to say I never felt uneasy. I don't even know the correct words to use, but I always, when I went into a pod, no matter what the reason was, whether it was good or bad, I never hesitated to go in. I mean, they could have been, well, they were, if they're fighting in there or, the inmate's got a weapon, you just went in. Didn't think about really, what the outcome could be. That was your job,
I
and
think a lot of the
then you,
DNA, I think a lot of the DNA of a correctional officer is that we go into a fire while everyone's trying to get out of that fire. We go in to help
now
a
you're frozen.
situation because, we are the help. There is no other help coming. It is us the help.
Yeah. Well, when something happened, you knew who really was going to have your back in a situation where you needed help. But, and again, you know what? I always said that the whole time I was in there. Somebody that doesn't jump in with you right away, that is there. I never took that personal. I always told them, I'm not mad at you. That's just the way it is. But then I thought about it was maybe this really isn't a job for you because you can get me hurt or you can get yourself hurt or somebody else.
So let me
You
let me
know,
tell you, let me jump on that one, and I probably have bored you with this story before, but when I started out, it just so happened that I was around a lot of people who were like me, just come out of the military, uh, very alpha male. It was a place that was pretty active. It was a very active place, and we had to run a lot to go support each other. And there was one guy who did not seem to always be there, and it was really bothering us. And there's a lot of this story. I'll just get to the part that matters the most, and that is eventually he and I got put on an assignment together where we relied upon each other. And we had to go, we were on the road for 3 days. And so every night we had dinner together. So first night was awkward, because I'm thinking, man, all this stuff I've been through and the stuff that we've been through, and he always seemed to get there later, not at all. Second night, finally the third night we went to dinner. he knew that there was this thing between us, you know. I guess I wasn't that good at hiding it. And he asked me, he said, "Hey, what's up?" And I'm like, "Hey, I gotta tell you, man." And I laid it all out there to him. It was, and I'll get emotional if I talk about it, but he laid out to me about how much it affected him that he was not physically capable of doing the types of things that we did. He realized that his value was the fact that he could document, he could take photos, he could collect evidence. He could be that guy who protected us by making sure all the documentation was done correctly, everything was signed, everything was sealed, delivered the way it was supposed to be. And when I saw the emotions in him about how much it affected him, and boy, it really made me feel. It made me realize how much of an idiot I was because he was giving his 100%. You
Exactly.
know, it was
Yep.
his 100%. I wasn't doing that. I wasn't smart enough to do that. I never took the time to figure out how to handle evidence. I never took the time how to get the paperwork done and then copied and put into a system. I didn't learn all that. He did. And he did that because he saw that as his value. He and I became very good buddies, you
Yeah.
know, and that's where I gave him a chance to, or I shouldn't say gave him a chance. Once I stopped being the jerk that I was, I found out he was like the ultimate father. He was like the ultimate husband. He was a great, great human being in many, many ways. And I've always been embarrassed about that first year that I worked with him because instead of just opening up my eyes and understanding that not everybody's the same,
Yeah.
I missed out on another year of knowing the guy.
Yeah. And how many people do you do you meet in that field that at first, they always say that first impression, that first impression rocks you. Well, there's some people that I feel like the same way. You know them for a while, and then, like you said, you either talk to them or whatever the circumstance, and you're like, wow, I was pretty much a jerk thinking that way about him. You know,
Yeah,
because
there's. Go ahead.
like in my case, my unit managers, they were most matter of fact, all of them, yeah, all of them were all female, and that was kind of like our deal. I told them, and I straight up, like my weakness is paperwork. They're like, we got you. We got you. We'll handle it. And that's almost like the perfect example of what you went through. But yours was a little more in depth. But they took care of me on that end. And if they need some heavies done, then that's what I went and did. You know. But you got to learn, and if you work hand in hand with somebody, it makes your job a lot easier. And like you said, some people just aren't that run to the fire type of person. And I really never took that personal.
Yeah, and
I just did.
that's the important part is when you break it all down there, everybody has a chore they can do in it, you know. Um,
Right.
so that's, but I, you know, like saying again, you know, through this corrections thing, you know, and I was just thinking back to that first year. Gosh, I met so many interesting people because I met people who had been there like 15 years, you know, so they were kind of that person that walked in with a swagger, you know,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
the inmates didn't call him by a first name or a nickname because they knew to respect him. You know what I
Right.
mean? But
Yep.
then again, at the end, though, the inmates knew that they got respect from the staff members because they got it. They understood what it was all about, and it was a really neat place. Like I said, it was pretty active. We had a couple escape attempts, one with where they brought guns in the facility.
Wow.
That was a fun one there. Then we had another incident where a plane landed to try to pick some up. I was there for two riots where they actually one of them they took the place over. So you know, you learn a lot about each other in those situations. And at the end of the day, when you look around the room, there's not one person in there that wanted any ill will to happen to anybody.
Right. Yep.
So just give them the respect back. You know?
Yep. You do meet a lot of great people, you
Yeah.
know. And like the OGs, some of them, you know, when I started in, like, I was a little later in my years, but some of them, they were my age, and they've already been there 15, 20 years, and then they look at me and automatically they always thought that I came from another facility. What made you come to Northeast Ohio? I kind of needed a job. I didn't tell them. I didn't know what they were referring to. I just said, "What do you mean you needed a job?" I said, "Yeah, I just got hired here." Oh, I would have never guessed that. And then I think it was just that military stance. Everybody just
Yeah.
kind of thought, not again, to toot your horn, but you just carried yourself different. That's all there was to it. But yeah, I met a lot of good ones. They taught me a lot. And again, that's what I'm hoping people take from what we're talking about is learn something from it. Listen and, take something from it. You never know. May save your life.
Yeah, I think, if you go back, first day stuff is try to take into consideration all the training that you have. Get to know the inmate handbook. Know the inmate handbook. The other thing is to know your building schedule. Like you said earlier, you knew you had to get, inmates in and out for chow, inmates to go to programming, inmates to go to medical. Know that building schedule. I understand there's going to be communication on the radio, but make sure it's appropriate communication on the radio. You got to say more than a few words, get on the telephone and talk it out. And talk to people. But there's that stuff where, a lot of times the inmates, they help you. They don't want, the vast
Oh,
majority of them,
absolutely.
they don't want their day jacked up.
No,
They want
not
to
at
get to
all.
their rec, they want to get to their programming, they want to get to their chow, they want to get back to the TV show, they want to get to their card game, they want to get to their hobby craft. Last thing they want is you
Exactly.
getting all jacked up. So a lot of times they'll be helpful, like, hey, it's not the key on that end of the ring. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Or
they just want to get the
you're
darn broom and
calling them
get their
too
stuff.
early,
Yeah, yeah,
calling them 20 minutes early for chow. We don't go this early.
right.
But you know what? You learn to accept that. Inmates are inmates are inmates, but they're also human too. And not all of them are out to make it hard for you. You know, they will guide you, but you just got to know that difference between work and work
Right.
and outside of work. And you just got to remember that they're inmates. There's no friendship there. There's no love there. You just, that's just something and that's a hard thing to decipher. Is to sit
Yeah.
back when you're having a conversation with them like we are right now, and you think it a million times. Wow, they're just regular people. But
Yeah, there's just certain things you don't get specific about. You don't get specific about
yeah,
politics. You don't get
no,
specific about what you think of the law. You don't get
mm-mm.
specific about religions because you don't know where they're coming from. So, what are some of the topics you would say are bland enough to have a conversation with an inmate that won't pin you into a what did you say?
Yeah. I honestly, I tried to keep it prison related. You know, what was going on in there, what we were doing. I always just I try to give them no information, none. It was always talking about the wreck, the chow, the cleanliness of the pods, things like that. And if they came at me with a question that was inappropriate, then I flat out told them I'm not going to answer that, and that's my business. I don't get in your personal space. I would appreciate it if you don't get in mine. You know, and like I said, from day one, and when you've heard me say it before about respect, that was preached to me from the beginning. And I think I handled that part well because I could walk into any unit in that facility and most of them knew my name or seen me. And, I wasn't going to one that was going to spin them and not come back and see them. You know,
Yeah.
I kept notes. I tried to come back. It was just a common courtesy thing. It would make my life easier
Mhm.
and it kept them, thinking, okay, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. I never
So
did anything I shouldn't.
so Charlie now going back to Charlie day one, what advice would Charlie now give Charlie day one?
Choose your battles. Everything isn't uh, an infraction. Yeah,
Not everything's a five-alarm fire. Sometimes you just
yeah,
need a garden hose to put out a fire. I don't need to come swinging a big axe every time somebody does something. Like you walk in and the guy's sitting on the table. That doesn't mean you need to lock him up and seg.
right. Right.
Well, what's the big deal with sitting on a table? Well, people eat their food and they play their cards there. They probably don't want someone's tailbone sitting on it.
Yeah.
So
Did you
you're
sit on
keeping
your
the
mom's
peace.
table when you're at home? No.
So you can walk by and give a verbal counseling and say, hey, you shouldn't have done that. Now he does this 5 times. Guess what? Now you're getting disbarred for it.
And that's why when I was doing rounds or whatever I was doing, I wouldn't just walk by people, inmates, and not talk to them because they were inmates. I would talk to anybody that had a conversation with me. You know what I mean? And I think that's why I had the rapport with them that I had throughout the years, and it just keeps getting better as the years go on. Because again, they knew, they knew I was serious. And when there was a time to react, we reacted. When there was a time not to, then we just had a normal conversation. You're making that little corner of your world your own. They know you, you know them. And that's the other important thing is you need to know who you're dealing with inmate wise. You should know your inmates. Okay. But
Boy, Charlie, we've had some great conversation today. I really appreciate you, one, sharing your experiences, but two, allowing me to kind of dip back into my old rusted up brain and come up with a few of my own. So it's a great conversation. So I want to ask you one last question. You ready?
go ahead. I'm ready.
Charlie Bueno could say something to a new employee who's starting corrections and they've gone through their training and they've been introduced to it. What advice would you give?
Think before you speak. Follow your training. Follow your gut. And again, don't treat everything as a forest fire.
Okay.
Don't rush to judgment, and don't be afraid to come to your people that have been in the field for a while and ask questions or ask for a little bit of assistance. And
Great advice.
and never forget your first day. Never, because it will come back. You'll just be through your years. It'll just come back on you, and it'll just be that moment where, man, that smell, or the first person that you ran into that made an impact on you. But yeah, just I mean, go home the same way you came, walking on 2 feet.
There you go.
You know.
Words of wisdom from Charlie Bueno.
Yeah,
Semper Fi, my brother. Semper Fi.
Thank you. Semper Fi, brother. Love you.